Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you a brand new Fire Emblem Heroes video. Well, maybe it's not brand new by 2021 standards, but it's definitely a video worth looking at. So if you haven't actually seen the title already, basically this video is going to cover Mythics. And I think it's a good time to talk about it since we have new Mythics. And I haven't really covered Regan or Ceros, but they'll be touched on in this video and they can definitely apply to future Mythics as well. So basically I'm going to go over how Mythics work, which Mythics you should look at and highly consider, and as well as how important they are, like why you should have Mythics, which ones, kind of like a targeting system, but also how difficult it is and how important they are for progression of your account. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Sit back and let's do it. Okay guys, so first up, I'm going to just cover the effect of the Mythic and what it means, because it's a lot of text and I don't think everyone understands this fully. So the thing with Mythic effect here is it's basically contributions to score plus stats for the units that are blessed. The stats are nice, they help you win, but ultimately you got to understand how the scoring system works in Aether Raids, and I think even to this day it's not fully understood. The way I like to summarize all that text there is the optimal situation is 3 Mythics blessing 2 units, and then you have your bonus slot that a new Mythic will provide. Now think of it simply as 3 Mythics and 2 units being blessed is optimal, assuming merges on those 3 Mythics. If you don't have merges, then 2 Mythics and 3 blessed units is also about the same. The thing with this is the merges and how that influences the score. So when you go into Aether Raids, by the way, the bonus slot does not contribute to score at all. It does add blessing stats, but it doesn't contribute to score. Make sure if you use a bonus Mythic in offense or defense, it's not in the bonus slot, it's in your main core team. That way you actually benefit from the lift loss prevention, where you can sacrifice a unit. If you don't need that because you just win every match, then you can just put it in the bonus slot for the extra stats, or just use another unit in general. You still need a bonus unit to get the additional score, so that could be the Astra trio, but be careful managing a bunch of Mythics. Essentially what I want to go through here is how the score functions. So you have, let's say, Air, Peony, and Light Season. And then you might either have Mila or Freya, and the thing here is every merge that you add in offense for a Mythic gives you an additional 16 score. That's the easy way to think about it, because 16 score is 16 matches, or 8 if you double up everything through the span of a season. So every merge gives you 1 score per match, 16 additional score per season. That is a consistent amount of score given, and it's very important to think about when trying to progress your account score and rankings in Aether Raids, or meeting certain criteria like getting in Vault of Heavens or staying in Vault of Heavens. So offense Mythics are very important for score. Now the contrast here is the defense Mythics, which every merge saves you an additional point of lift every time you lose lift. Now depending on your defense team, that may be impactful, or it may not be impactful, because if you just win every match on defense, which is possible with good defense, then your merges on your defense Mythic may not do anything. You essentially need to lose lift to get value out of the prevention of the merges on a defense Mythic. Therefore, offense Mythics are by nature better than defense Mythics, because what you should do on defense is focus on the attributes that you can prevent a good defense, merges on those defense, and good skills that are made available through you. Those are the things you should focus on for improving defense, and not trying to merge up defense as a sort of security blanket. Of course, there are players that will beat your defense, but you can't always guarantee that. So offense first, defense Mythics second. That's why someone like Ceros isn't going to be as important as Regan when it comes to just generally merging up Mythics. Alright, so hopefully that summed it up as best as I could. Essentially focus on offense Mythics for scoring and ranking. Defense Mythics are nice for preventing lift loss, but not necessarily required to be merged up. Like a 1-off of Ceros, unlock a 7 slot, prevent some lift loss. Or in the case of the Hero Fest, currently active, get Sothis if you don't have a Dark Defense Mythic, just have her on the team and give you a little bit of leeway. That's how I'd like to look at it. So that being said, how expensive is it? Mathematics, guys, mathematics. Okay, so it isn't common that I go through this because math might confuse some people, or maybe it's just overwhelming, but I'm gonna again try to summarize as best I can for you. Essentially, it's expensive. It's really expensive to merge Mythics, okay? The 50th percentile to get Naga, specific blue focus on a legendary, 50%. 1 in 2 people spend 2,107 orbs to complete a +10 Mythic on offense from nothing, from no merges at all. That is expensive. Some people, just 1 in 4 people, spend 1,700 orbs. That's still a lot of orbs. That's basically half the year of playing the game. And then the really unlucky people, 1 in 10 spend 3,000 orbs, and 1 in 100 spend 4,000 orbs. You see how this gets crazy? You have to play almost a full year without spending orbs on anything else to get that score increase. And the game is competitive enough that you want these merges to give you the leeway should you make mistakes or your defense falters on a week. So it's important, but you can still get value out of this. And the way to get value out of this is to look at overlap on Mythics. So the best overlap right now, which I don't think has happened yet, but may happen, for example, is Peony and Naga, let's say sharing in blue. Now, in legendaries, if you have Peony and Naga sharing in blue, you're essentially spending 2,100 orbs to complete both seasons. Yeah, pretty much both seasons in this case, because with color sharing on a legendary banner, you're about getting equal merges on all units that share in color throughout that orb expenditure. That is crazy good, and that's why waiting for a legendary mythic banner where you have overlap on specific targets is the key to saving or getting value out of those orbs as opposed to sniping the mythics. This recently happened with Astra in the form of Plumeria and Regan sharing, I believe in December. You basically really increased and inflated the Astra rankings and scoring because 2 Astra Mythics were sharing in one color. This could happen later with Peony and Naga, and could happen with future Mythics as well. Look for that sharing, especially if it's offense based, and get value. Now, if you combine all pieces of the puzzle here, legendaries, defense Mythics, offense Mythics, and they're all sharing in one color, you can get some really good value in your targets, and then that's how you spend the orbs. So while this may look expensive, it actually is if you're sniping one specific unit. It gets a lot more tolerable when all the units in a color end up sharing, and you're literally making progression no matter which mythic or legendary you're pulling in that case. That's how I tackle it, and you essentially save for those. Now, it really hurts when you do end up, like, let's say, sparking every banner or trying to play with every new toy, and I'm gonna definitely call out stuff like far save, near save in this case, you know, the new duo heroes, Linja, Christmas Altina. If you just end up following the hype every single time, you're never going to be able to create progression on your account in the form of either arena scoring or mythic scoring, which I basically covered in the beginning. So keep that in mind, especially if you're F2P and you're trying to make some progression on your account. You have to be diligent and resilient to everything that comes out and make what you have work to create progression. All right, moving on. Now I'm going to cover the actual mythics themselves, and I think this will stay pretty relevant in the long term, guys. It should still remain relevant. So, all right, I'm going to start with light and dark. I think that's a good place to start. So ranking, just blue is good, blue is best, gold is good, and silver is not so good. Let's just think of it like this. So dancers are going to be the best no matter what, okay? A mythic that is a dancer is going to remain timeless. I'm going to say this with full confidence, because a dancer is a support unit that is always almost used in offense, and there's very little a defense can do to stop someone from using one. The only situation where I see defense dancers and offense dancers becoming like irrelevant is in situations where we get stuff like sudden isolations and an Iago version of your separated and always isolating dancers, and then they become, that would be the situation where they pretty much become meta non-relevant. However, you may not always run into that, and essentially that dance support option should always be there. And even in that case, these dancers can be pretty good. Like Triandra, for instance, is a strong nuke. She's just literally better than Yoon in terms of offensive pressure, that she can come in and do lots of damage. Yoon has auto doubles and some debuffs. That's essentially her purpose. And to have just a Yoon that is stronger is what Triandra to Yoon is in this case. And it's sad, but it's the reality. Now, that's why Peony and Triandra should age really well in the long term, because I think they'll always want to be there. There's good overlap too, in the form of Peony sharing with Naga right now, potentially in the future. You have blue overlap and you can create merges that way. That really does mean that it's harder for a color, let's say right now, where there isn't a lot of overlap, to create score increases. So, for example, Astra right now doesn't have a green offense mythic, so Freya isn't as valuable because she has nothing to really overlap with for offense value. Just if you were focusing strictly on mythic merges, of course, on offense. So the other ones on this node is Mila, Air, and Brammy. Now, I think they age decently, but not necessarily resilient to meta. And the reason for this is isolation is really good, and that's why I place Mila where she is, because she just generally, it's nice to have isolation and force defenses to adapt, but that doesn't mean that the defenses won't adapt. And once they do, Mila becomes much less relevant, because all she really has at that point is like Nurturing Breath, and I'm just going to buff everything else. However, in a situation where she truly becomes like not so good, she can at least run Infantry Pulse as an infantry offense mythic, and that's still fairly unique to her. And you can repurpose her that way, where the situation where isolation isn't good, and maybe set up some nice teams that way. So I think Mila is good and should last, because at least it'll force some easy matches to happen by targeting weak dancers on a defense team. Now, Air is an interesting story. I think that she has come a long way, and the thing is, her stat spread really lends to this. She's very offensive natured. Lithia Berg has recoil on it, which combined with Fury means you can set her up into Wings of Mercy just off 2 combat engagements. She can run the very useful Disarm Trap, which you can basically disable and set up good positions to overcome your enemy. She can run Tamari, which is a debuff dagger to cover, enemies and make your setups much nicer. So I feel like, and you'll see the Air build right below, popularly known as Air Force, essentially target 2 units that you can snipe on the front line. Wings of Mercy is ready, set up with Peony, and then like someone like Navarre or Curtains, Blue Lancers come in, sweep and trap the team for a pretty solid win. So Air's debuff potential, good offensive stat spread, utility should age pretty well as well. Now finally, Brammy, and being maybe not so important, like not so relevant. The thing with Brammy is he's like the definition of 1v1 me, bro. So Brammy is like, I have a C skill that's like, I don't care about your supports, and it's just a literal one-on-one battle with me. This is a good and a bad thing, because essentially Brammy over time will become less impactful because he's just a 1v1 me bro unit, and he's relying on like auto doubles and a bunch of stats to overcome his 1v1 scenarios. Right now he's good, but he may not age as well as units just get stronger, both on offense and defense. It doesn't matter, he's just going to get kind of outclassed. However, him being colorless, him being ranged, and his tome generally being pretty good, lends himself to aging fairly well. His C scale is going to be really good because it means that the individual units he plays against can't just be super supported, and he's going to be able to overcome that. Now I put a pretty unique build down here with Brammy, which is the speed build. So in the scenarios where people run null follow-up, or his like auto double effect starts becoming a lot less inconsistent because people run whatever follow-up denials or anything like that, he can start speed stacking. The build shown below is actually a 50 speed Brammy with ARD speed res Swift Sparrow, and he has great bulk through the Void Tome effect. The res portion of that's actually a fairly budget build. I mean, if you null follow up through codes, for example. So I feel like Brammy himself should still be remain relevant, even if his Void Tome loses that auto double like effect, like it gets countered. He can run speed and still be threatening, or he can just be bulky and then rely on Void Tome's auto double. Either way you look at it, he's going to have pretty even good matchups regardless of the units that are released, and should still be relevant for a very long time. However, now I'm going to talk about Yune, Sothis, and Freya, and to some people you might be surprised to see Freya in all the way in last place, but hear me out on this one. Yune is an easy one for me to describe. She is literally just worse Triandra at this point. It doesn't really have much utility at all besides an auto double on her weapon, which is conditional on a debuff. And of course her debuffs herself aren't super consistent, nor are they really relevant. Like, it's chaos named, I believe, in the C skill, and that's not that great really at the end of the day. So that leaves me with Yune and Sothis, and I'm going to call these the combat mythics. Basically, they provide no utility, and they're just strictly trying to win against enemy teams. Now, Freya is great if that's your role. You just want someone who's like a combat relevant mythic. And as someone who's used air before as a carry unit with close counter and such, I can tell you that eventually falls off as a useful role. So someone like Freya is good now because she's current, but as time goes on and stronger units are released on defense and offense, Freya's reliability becomes a lot less relevant, and as the long-term choice mythic, she's not going to age as well as those that can provide support utility. Same applies to Sothis, and it's already happened. So she was one of the early defense mythics. She basically just had good stats at her time. Newer units came out, she now can't really fulfill her role of combat, and therefore she's almost dead weight on a defense. This is amplified by the fact that dragons themselves do not have any breaths or support like natured abilities at all. That's the biggest weakness with those defense and offense mythics in the last spot. I would not recommend merging them up. You will likely have some trouble, you know, years down the road, 1 or 2 years down the road, realistically, and trying to maintain their relevancy. I already struggle to maintain relevancy on Yune and Sothis as they were my early mythics. I'm okay with everything else, and that's kind of just how I see it right now. But with that being said, let's look forward into Anima and Astra, yeah? So with Anima and Astra, I do think this is how it stands right now. And this one is a more diversified list. Again, Plumeria and Mira stand at the top because they are dancers. And again, the only way they'll get outclassed is like if there's literally a better dancer that comes out. And I still don't think that necessarily holds true because they have unique effects in their weapons and their dance. So they should remain relevant and they're good investments to pick up. As it stands right now, Regan is really powerful because of Kanto and her really good special, which synergizes with her high offensive stat spread in a kind of similar fashion to Air. But because of Kanto, she also remains support utility in the form of like reposition and then canceling out, sniping, let's say, ether pots or buildings and getting away from that. So she's not strictly combat related. She has good combat right now, but I think she'll still age well because, of course, she can Kanto, and Kanto is really good. So Regan, Mira, and Plumeria are definitely my top Astra Anima picks that you should consider merging. But with that being said, in the mid tier right now, I would look at Cyros, Duma, and Thrasir. Maybe to some surprise, you'd see like, you know, Cyros being mid tier, and that's a surprise, or maybe Duma being mid tier. How is that possible? But of course, hear me out on what I think here. So Duma, actually, when it comes to literally combat utility, the guy is last place for sure. He sucks at trying to basically threaten the enemy. Okay, he's an armor, he has 1 movement, he has a plethora of weaknesses. His Fellbread doesn't really do much. All he has going for him is a high attack stat. So if he gets a chance to attack through the use of like Wings of Mercy or something, he might actually kill things. But getting him there and setting that up is a pain, and he's just not really providing much in terms of combat to your team. However, Upheaval has probably aged the best of like every mythic in the game right now. Like, Upheaval is insanely good, and the fact that Duma provides attack to your team is also really good. So this is why. So Duma is really good in what I want to call a face hunter archetype. So this comes from Hearthstone, where you aggressively zerg your opponent before they can even react. This is what a cab line is, this is what a return trap is, this is what a dancer trap is with Syros. If you've heard these terms now, basically swarm your opponent before they set up. Duma lends himself well to this archetype by having 7 like unmitigated damage. He hits for 7 off upheaval on the first turn and also buffs your allies for 3 attack. This lends itself really well to aggressive play, and Duma helps a lot with that. So of course Syros also provides attack, and the thing that's unique about Syros is that she, like right now, provides that 7th slot, but that's all she has really going for her at the moment. She unlocks a 7th slot and then has auto double or auto double prevention effects right now. That is not that great, unfortunately. Her C skill is also not super great or consistent either. It's awkward because it stops at turn 5 for bonus stats, so that means it's not really ideal for a stall team where 6 and 7 turns are very important, but it's also pretty irrelevant for the first few turns, and it only applies to other mythics. So essentially you would want her C skill to be used on combat mythics, but also you want your team to not fight on turn 1 or later in the games. It's just a very awkward C skill, and Syros has therefore nothing really going for her besides unlocking the 7th slot. So I put her right now in the mid because that 7th slot upgrades your defense and provides you with different defense archetypes, but it's not going to last long term, especially the next Anima defense mythic that comes out. I see Syros being replaceable very fast, while someone like Duma has utility forever. Like, he's just going to be good because he just has upheaval, and that's good enough. The other defense type that Duma lends himself well to is the combination of him plus Catapult. They're basically best bros. They cover 2 lanes of I hate this building, and that could be really good, especially because of sniping common bolt tower lanes like lane 3 and 4. You put Doom on 3, you put Catapult on 4, boom, no bolt tower threat. Your team is now not going to get sniped on turn 3. You've created a sort of good fortification. So Duma's good on the face hunter archetype, and he's good on the I'm just going to have a good solid front line, don't snipe my units kind of thing. Both are good. Now, Thrasier as well lands herself to kind of mid, but that's only because the other mythics, defense mythics, and like she's basically just better than Lif right now. And that's kind of sad. Syros' auto double and auto double prevention are basically I am Lif. I'm Lif, but I'm a dragon and I'm blue. Lif has an auto double. And auto double prevention is like Duma in either Worry Fighter or Fell Breath. You hit me, that's fine, you can't hit me twice, with the conditions, of course. So, that's why Syros doesn't lend himself well, and Thrasier is just, I'm a good green nuke with a good stat. It's like the Brammy of Anima, but you would have already noticed that Thrasier's starting to fall off because she can't beat certain blue units. You know, like that guy from Fire Emblem 7 with the axe. But he's using a lance, and he's not really in armor. But you see what I'm getting at. Essentially, Thrasier is the combat mythic of Anima, and Lif is somewhat of that too. Syros is going to be delegated into combat, and the best sort of defense mythics as a result end up being Mira, Duma, and Syros just for that 7th slot, for now. Alright, and that finally brings me to the bottom tier. But before I do that, of course, I'm going to look at Reginn really quickly. I mentioned her earlier. Again, not much you got to do to make Reginn usable, and should remain usable regardless of whether she can't fill that role of being a combat unit. At the worst case scenario, you give her a Link skill, she cantos out, maybe chills or something in the seal, maybe Links become seals later. She'll remain useful, and that's strictly because of Kanto's utility right now. Now, finally, as I said for Syros, I just like green, so she has a green build there. But like I said, long term, not going to be too great. Finally, Altina, Naga. Why are they at the bottom? This is probably not a surprise, but Altina is a combat mythic, meaning she provides no supportive utility without completely revamping her build. This means giving her stuff like Geishin or Katamatsu or something like that, giving her links, smites, and just completely revamping her off from combat. Altina is a great carry, similar to what Freya is in Light and Dark, but should fall off if you're basically not building your whole team to make her work, and therefore limiting the sort of strategies you could potentially do for different units, like a blessed unit where Altina is supporting that blessed carry, you know? So the fact that Altina is strictly just carry material doesn't really do much. Now, in contrast, Naga has at least Divine Fang, which gives her dragon effectiveness, and that technically made her age better because of Cyros. I still wouldn't consider her to age beyond that. Both Altina and Naga feel like smite bots who just buff the rest of your team at best, or occasionally engage in combat to clean up, but because they're melee to movement units, it's not that great. And I am not, like, she basically, both Altina and Naga can do what Regan does, but worse. And that's a big detriment in the long term. People who use Altina and Naga, they try to hide them in the corners because that's like your best play in a lot of cases. Lift doesn't have much going for him either. He's a melee to movement. He has an auto double. He recoils his enemies, causing them to take damage. You could probably create something cool out of that, or gimmicky that could work. But at the end of the day, he's just not better than the other defense mythics right now. He doesn't provide any utility, and he's trying to just threaten units. And that's what something like Cyros might try to do too. But again, that's how I see it. So with that being said, I hope you guys took something out of this lengthy video and big discussion. Feel free to let me know in the comments below on your thoughts on the Anima, Light, Dark, and Astra Mythics right now and what could come later. You know, has this maybe enlightened you to refocus your plans on the Mythics, or if you're trying to decide on which one you should go for, always think about the overlap, the sharing of colors between that, and then committing to something like that. With that being said, guys, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys hopefully in the next one. Be sure to check out Discord and Twitch as well for further discussions. Much love. Peace.